You woke up early, put on the sneakers you've kept for months, and made your walk. Every day the same route, the same gait, the same bench where you stop to breathe. You did it with the certainty of someone who is taking care of your health, and you do it very well. But what happens inside your body as you walk, after the age of 50, may be slowly wearing away something you don't see. And the most disconcerting thing is that the body tries to warn. But no one stopped to explain what that tiredness that didn't exist before means, that stab in the hip that appears in the late afternoon, that feeling that the legs are heavy the next day. No one has explained why people believe that walking every day is always good, always safe, always the same for everyone. But after 50, my friends, it's not. Think about the dimension of this. You're putting in motion pounds and pounds of bones, muscles, fluids, arteries, nerves. With each step, the impact goes up the tibia, through the knee, reaches the pelvis, goes up the spine, and meets the base of the skull. After 50, the cartilage that cushions this impact is no longer the same thickness. The fluid that lubricates the joints is no longer produced with the same abundance. And the brain, which coordinates balance, relies on a response time that begins to change silently. When you walk wrong, even if the mistake seems small, you're repeating a poorly distributed impact thousands of times a week. The body accumulates microlesions that do not hurt at the time, but they're there, layer by layer, until the day your knee swells for no apparent reason, or your heel burns when you step on the cold kitchen floor, or your neck locks up when you turn to back up the car. Here's what almost no one explains. Most people who start to feel these signs think that it is a matter of age, that there is no way, that it is just like that. The 15-minute consultation barely gives time to hear this. The system is set up to prescribe you an anti-inflammatory, a muscle relaxant, perhaps an imaging test that will show wear and tear that you already suspected. But no one teaches you to look at the way you walk. No one tells you that the most common mistake when walking after 50 is not walking too little. It is walking in a way that sabotages day after day what you most want to protect: your ability to move alone, to carry groceries, to play with your grandchildren, to get up from your chair without supporting yourself. I'm going to show you now the 7 mistakes when walking that are destroying your health after 50. These are not guesses. These are mechanisms that happen inside your body as you take each step. And I'm not going to speak from afar with difficult words. I'm going to talk the way I would if you were here in front of me, as I've done with so many patients who arrived scared with pain they didn't understand. Patients like Mrs. Lucia, 62 years old, who walked an hour a day and could no longer climb the slope of her street. Patients like Mr. Antonio, 58 years old, who wore the most expensive sneakers in the store and lived with fasciitis. Patients like Mrs. Celia, 67 years old, who gradually lost her balance and fell into the house, in a fall that could have been avoided if someone had explained what I am going to explain now. But before I get into the mistakes, I need you to understand the real size of the problem. Because what is at stake here is not just a pain in the knee or a temporary tiredness. What is at stake is something much bigger, much deeper, and that is revealing itself little by little, silently, as you repeat the same walk month after month, year after year, without ever suspecting that small details are undermining precisely what you believe you are building. I see this every week in the office. A person over 50 years old arrives, sometimes over 60, 70, and he tells me like this: "Doctor, I don't understand. I take care of my health. I walk every single day. I don't fail. And yet I'm more and more tired. More and more so. More and more so." And I look at that person and I see in them the face of frustration. The frustration of those who did everything they told them to do and still did not reap the promised result. The frustration of those who are starting to think that their body has simply given up on her. And it is at this moment that I begin to explain what no one has explained before. Because the truth is that walking is one of the most powerful tools that exist for health after 50. But it is a double-edged tool. Used in the right way, it repairs, rebuilds, strengthens, rejuvenates. Used in the wrong way, it wears out, inflames, ages faster. And the worst thing is that the wrong way is exactly the way most people have learned to do it. The way it feels right. The way everyone recommends without explaining the nuances. Think of your body as a house you've lived in for over 50 years. The walls have their marks. The roof has already gone through some storms. The pipes no longer have the same flow as when they were new. Now imagine that every day you do a renovation in this house without looking at the plant, without checking where the pipes are, without knowing which walls can support weight and which are just partitions. You hammer here, drill there, with the best of intentions. In the beginning, the house is even beautiful. But one day, an infiltration appears in the ceiling, then a crack in the wall, then the floor starts to sink. And you ask yourself, but how, if I was renovating every day? The answer is simple. You were renovating without knowing the structure. And that's exactly what happens when you walk wrong after 50. You are messing with a structure that no longer responds as before, that no longer has the same reservations, that no longer forgives the same mistakes. Now follow me in this reasoning. When you were 30, your bones were as dense as hardwood. His cartilages were new, thick, hydrated pads. His muscles responded quickly to the brain's commands. Their tendons were elastic like new rubber. His heart pumped blood with force, and his arteries were flexible tubes that adapted to each change in pressure. Your brain processed information at a speed you didn't even notice. All of this formed an integrated system where each part compensated for the other. If you stepped wrong, the ankle corrected, the knee cushioned, the hip distributed, the spine absorbed. It was a finely tuned orchestra. But after 50, this orchestra begins to lose some musicians. It's not that she stops playing, but it goes out of tune more easily. And if the conductor, which is the way you move, gives you the wrong command, the result is not beautiful music. It is a noise that accumulates behind the scenes. Now I'm going to plant 2 questions in your mind that will guide everything I'm going to say going forward. 2 questions you should carry while listening to me. The first question is this: what exactly is going on inside my arteries, inside my bones, inside my brain, as I take every step of my daily walk? The second question is, what is the seemingly harmless detail that is negating half of the benefits I believe I am receiving? Save these 2 questions, because by the end of this video, you'll have answers that will transform your journey into something completely different. And I'm not talking about empty promises. I'm talking about mechanisms that you'll understand so clearly that you'll never walk the same way again. Let me take you now inside the body of someone who is walking the way most do. Imagine a 61-year-old woman. Let's call her Maria Helena, which is the name of a real patient who passed by me. Maria Helena has been walking for 12 years, religiously, 45 minutes a day. She leaves home at 7 in the morning, fasting, because she has heard that this way she burns more fat. She wears very comfortable sneakers, one of those very soft ones, which looks like a mattress on her feet. She walks looking at the ground, paying attention to the irregularities of the sidewalk. She always takes the same route, a flat 2-kilometer circuit that she repeats 3 times. She doesn't drink water during the walk because she doesn't want to have to go to the bathroom halfway through. She walks with her shoulders a little tense, thinking about the problems of the day, the bills to pay, the daughter who didn't call, the husband who has high blood pressure. She returns home, takes a shower, and goes on with the day. And she thinks she's doing everything right. But inside Maria Helena's body, there is a battle going on that she does not see. Her adrenal glands, which sit on top of her kidneys, are releasing a stress hormone because her body is fasting and is being physically demanded. This hormone is breaking down proteins in your leg muscles to turn them into quick energy. The thigh muscle, which is the largest in the body and one of the main protectors of the knee, is slowly being consumed. Each week, a tiny fraction of muscle fiber disappears. On the scale, the weight may even decrease, but what is going away is not fat, it is support. Meanwhile, the forward-leaning head is compressing the arteries that run up the neck and carry blood to the brain. The flow of oxygen is reduced. The brain is functioning in economy mode, like a light bulb that receives less current. Thoughts are slower, short-term memory is failing, but Maria Helena attributes this to age. The soft sneaker is numbing the sensors on the sole of the foot. The small muscles that are supposed to stabilize the ankle are dormant. With each step, the ankle swings a little more than it should, and this swing rises to the knee, which makes a microscopic twist. The knee cartilage, which is already thinner and less hydrated, is sanded in this repeated twist. It doesn't hurt yet, but it is being worn out. The flat and repetitive course does not challenge the balance system. The cerebellum, which is the part of the brain that coordinates movements, is not being stimulated. It loses connections, like a muscle that is not used. The blood is thicker because there is not enough water. The heart is making more effort to pump. The pressure rises discreetly, and tense shoulders are keeping the body in a state of alertness that further elevates the stress hormone. The next night's sleep will be worse. Nighttime brain cleansing will be less efficient. And the next day, Maria Helena wakes up tired, but puts on her sneakers and repeats everything again. This is not an exaggeration. This is what happens layer by layer within millions of people who are walking right now, at this very moment, with the best of intentions. And the most disturbing thing is that each of these processes, in isolation, seems small, almost irrelevant, but they do not act in isolation. They add up, they enhance themselves, and over months and years, they dig a hole in health that no one sees coming, until the day the knee hurts when getting up, until the day when dizziness appears when turning your head, until the day when memory fails in a way that scares, and then it's too late to prevent it. It's time to remedy. I don't want that for you. I want you to understand each of these mechanisms so deeply that when you put on your sneakers tomorrow, you go out on the street with the awareness of someone who knows exactly what you're doing inside your own body. And that's why I'm now going to detail each of the 7 mistakes, one by one, with the calmness that this subject deserves. And I'm going to start with the mistake that is perhaps the hardest to accept, because it goes against everything you've heard in the last 20 years. First mistake: walk on an empty stomach. I know you've heard that fasted exercise burns fat. This was repeated in magazines, on television programs, in conversations in academia. And there is a kernel of truth in this, but for young people, with flexible metabolism, with intact hormone reserves. After 50, the game changes completely, and I'll explain why in a way you'll never forget. Inside your body there is a delicate balance between 2 states, the state of construction and the state of breaking. When you eat, your body goes into building mode. It uses nutrients to repair tissues, manufacture new proteins, strengthen bones, renew cells. When you go too long without eating, your body goes into breakdown mode. He needs to get energy from somewhere. In young people, this break is selective. The body first goes to fat stores, preserves muscle mass, keeps the metabolism working. But after 50, this selectivity decreases. The body becomes less efficient at accessing stored fat and faster at breaking down muscle protein. It's as if your energy system has a programmed shortcut to the muscle. And why does this happen? Because muscle is a source of quick energy, and the body after 50 is more concerned with surviving than maintaining beautiful muscles. Nature has not evolved to keep us strong in old age. Nature has evolved to keep us alive in situations of scarcity. And your body doesn't know that the grocery store is 3 blocks away. He reacts to fasting as if he were in a situation of famine. When you go for a walk without having eaten anything since the night before, your blood glucose levels are low. The brain, which consumes a huge amount of glucose, begins to send warning signals. The adrenal glands, the ones I mentioned, get the message and fire the stress hormone. This hormone travels through the blood and reaches the muscles. There he gives the order: break down proteins and turn them into glucose. It is a process called muscle breakdown for energy production, and it happens mainly in type 2 muscle fibers, which are exactly the fibers that give strength and power. They are the fibers that allow you to climb a ladder firmly, to lift a chair, to carry the bags from the market. Every time you walk fasted, you're sacrificing some of that fiber. The result does not appear on the scale. It appears in the difficulty of getting up from the toilet without supporting yourself. It appears on the leg that shakes when you go down a higher sidewalk. It appears in the feeling that the body is losing firmness, even if the weight remains the same. And there's more. The stress hormone does not only affect the muscles, it affects the bones. It hinders calcium absorption. It stimulates bone-breaking cells, called bone-eating cells. Over time, this contributes to osteoporosis. That bone that should be strengthened by walking is actually being weakened by the stress hormone that fasted walking has caused. It is a brutal nonsense. The effort you make to strengthen yourself is creating the conditions for fragility. I clearly remember a patient who made me understand the seriousness of this mistake. Her name was Dona Francisca. She was 68 years old, and she was the portrait of discipline. I woke up at 5:30, drank a glass of water, and went outside. He walked for a full hour, at a fast pace, with that determination of someone who is winning the battle against aging. She arrived at my office thin, with thin legs, and told me, "Doctor, I'm doing very well. I've lost 8 kilos since last year." But when I asked her to step on the bioimpedance scale, which shows the composition of the body, the result was alarming. More than half of the weight she lost was muscle mass. She wasn't losing weight. She was consuming herself. She was trading strength for lightness, and that's a dangerous trade-off after 60. When I explained the mechanism of fasting and the stress hormone, she was silent for a minute. Then he looked at me and said, "Doctor, so I spent a whole year digging the hole of my own weakness?" And the answer, unfortunately, was yes. But the good news is that this is reversible. The muscles can be rebuilt. The stress hormone can be controlled. Just change the strategy. The correct strategy is simple and does not require anything complicated. Before you go for a walk, put something in your stomach. It doesn't have to be a full meal. It can be a slice of wholemeal bread with a drizzle of olive oil. It could be a banana. It can be a handful of nuts, the kind you can find at any fair. It can be a natural yogurt without sugar. The important thing is that this food enters your body and sends a clear signal to your brain. Everything is fine. There is energy available. You don't need to panic. This simple gesture reduces the peak of stress hormone during walking. The body can then use fat as an energy source without having to cannibalize the muscles. The metabolism works in a more balanced way. The walk becomes, in fact, an exercise in construction and not in destruction. And here's a detail that I need you to record. What you eat before the hike is not going to be stored as fat. This is a myth. The body will use that energy during exercise. And the most interesting thing is that by giving this sign of security, you are teaching your body that it can trust you, that he doesn't need to live in emergency mode, that he can relax and use fat as fuel. This, my friends, is what we call a flexible metabolism, and it is the key to healthy aging. Think about it fondly. Tomorrow, before tying your sneakers, go to the kitchen and make this gesture of care for yourself. Eat something light. Feel the body receiving that food as if receiving an ally. And then go walk with the tranquility of someone who knows that he is not fighting against his own organism, but working in favor of it. Now, just as important as what you eat or don't eat is the posture you maintain as you walk. And here I get into the second mistake, which is to walk looking at the ground. This mistake is so common that I dare say that 9 out of 10 people after 50 walk like this, and I understand why. The fear of falling is real. The instinct to look where you step is natural, but the price you pay for this is much higher than you might think. I'm going to describe to you, as if we were watching a movie in slow motion, what happens to your spine when you tilt your head forward. Its head weighs about 5 kilograms. It is the weight of a 5-liter bag of rice. When she is balanced on top of her spine, looking at the horizon, this weight is evenly distributed across the 7 vertebrae of her neck. The discs that are between the vertebrae, which are like gelatinous pads, absorb the impact homogeneously. The neck muscles work in harmony, some pulling a little, others relaxing a little, in a constant fine adjustment. Now imagine that you tilt your head forward to look at the floor. The center of gravity shifts. The weight of the head, which was previously distributed, is now concentrated in the front of the vertebrae. The discs are compressed on one side only, as if you squeezed a sandwich only on one end. Over time, this uneven compression wears down the front of the discs. They lose height. The space between the vertebrae decreases. The nerves that leave the spine and go to the arms and head can start to be pinched. And then there are those symptoms that many think are normal for age. The pain in the neck at the end of the day, the feeling of sand on the shoulders, the headache that starts at the nape of the neck and goes up to the forehead, the tingling in the arms that appears out of nowhere. But the problem doesn't stop at the neck. To compensate for the tilted head, the rest of the spine needs to curve. The shoulders go forward, the chest closes, the upper back is rounded. This posture, which the ancients called a hunchback, compresses the lungs. The ability to breathe deeply decreases. The oxygen that enters is lower. The blood receives less oxygen. The brain receives less oxygen. And the person feels that tiredness that is not in the body, it is in the mind. That feeling that the day has not even started properly and is already exhausted. It is the shortness of breath that is not shortness of breath. It is a constant sigh, a yawn that does not relieve. And there is also an aspect that is the most dangerous of all. I mentioned it briefly before, but now I'm going to break it down. In the neck, two very important arteries pass, one on each side, which go up inside channels in the vertebrae and carry blood to the back of the brain. This back of the brain is where the center of balance, motor coordination, vision is. When the head is tilted forward, these arteries can be partially compressed. The flow of blood that reaches the center of balance decreases. This can cause dizziness, vertigo, feeling that the floor is moving. And the most serious thing is that this increases the risk of falls. Yes, the posture you adopt to avoid falling may be exactly the posture that is causing you to fall. Mrs. Celia, 67 years old, whom I mentioned at the beginning, is the clearest example of this. She had been walking looking at the ground for more than 10 years. Her daughter told me that her mother was getting more and more bent, slower and slower, more and more dizzy, until the day she got up from her living room chair, took 2 steps, and simply collapsed. He didn't trip over the carpet. He didn't slip on the wet floor. The balance system simply did not respond. The brain did not receive enough blood at the time she changed position. The fall resulted in a fractured wrist, which required surgery, and such a fear of falling again that she spent months not wanting to leave the house. All this because of a posture that no one corrected. No one sat down with her and said, "Mrs. Celia, look up, look at the horizon, feel the sky in front of you." No one explained that neck posture can be the difference between independence and fracture. Correcting this error is simpler than it seems, but it requires awareness. During the walk, try to keep your gaze on the horizon line. Imagine that you have a wire pulling the top of your head upwards, lengthening your spine. The shoulders should be relaxed, slightly back. The chest should be open, as if you were going to receive a hug. At first, this will seem strange. Your body has gotten used to the wrong posture and will want to go back to it, but insist. Gradually, the muscles of the back are strengthened. Those of the front of the chest are stretched, and the correct posture becomes natural. Blood will flow freely to the brain again. The balance will improve. The breath will get deeper, and walking will start to yield double the benefit. Now, pay attention to this detail because it changes everything. The third mistake is the footwear. And here I'm going to counter the entire sneaker industry, which spends billions on marketing to convince you that the softer, the better. It is not. After 50, the ideal footwear is not what looks like a cloud. It's what connects you with the ground. Your foot is a masterpiece of engineering. It has 26 bones, 33 joints, over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. On the sole of the foot, there are thousands of microscopic sensors that send information to the brain with each step. These sensors tell the brain whether the terrain is hard or soft, whether it is sloping or flat, whether it is stable or unstable. Based on this information, the brain adjusts the contraction of the muscles of the leg, hip, and back to maintain balance and distribute the impact. It's an instant response system that works all the time, without you having to think about it. Now, what happens when you put on a sneaker with a very thick and very soft sole? You're putting a gag on these sensors. They fail to sense the ground accurately. The brain is left without reliable information. It's like driving a car blindfolded. The brain then adopts a defensive strategy. He steps heavier, as if he were always waiting for a hole. The muscles of the foot, which should be actively working to stabilize the body, become lazy. They slowly atrophy. The arch of the foot, which is supported by these muscles, begins to sag. The plantar fascia, which is a band of tissue that connects the heel to the toes, starts to receive greater tension than it should. It inflames, and then comes the pain in the heel. That pain that burns when you step on the ground in the morning, that bothers you when you stand for a long time, that never seems to heal completely. Mr. Antonio, the 58-year-old patient, went through exactly that. He arrived at the office limping, with the face of someone who couldn't take it anymore. He said he had already spent a fortune on insoles, physiotherapy, injections. Nothing solved. The fasciitis came and went. He showed me the sneakers he wore. It was a sneaker from a famous brand, with a sole that looked like a pillow because it was so thick. I asked him to walk barefoot in front of me. His feet barely moved. The fingers were stiff. The arch of the foot almost didn't exist anymore. It had collapsed. The intrinsic muscles of the foot, those that sit inside the sole, were so weak that they barely contracted. He had been using a cushioning crutch for years, and his feet had forgotten how to stand on their own. The solution was to start using simpler, firmer shoes, with flexible soles but without so much cushioning. At first he was surprised. He said he felt the ground too much, but within a few weeks the muscles in his foot began to wake up. The arch was rebuilt. The fascia stopped complaining, and the pain he had been carrying for 2 years disappeared. This does not mean that you should walk with shoes as hard as wood. It means that you need a shoe that offers stability, that holds the heel well, that has room for the toes to move, and that has a sole firm enough for the sensors of your foot to feel the ground, but flexible in the front to allow the foot to make the rolling movement from heel to toes. It's a balance. Escape from extremes. Neither the sole that looks like a board, nor the sole that looks like a cloud. Something in between. Something that respects the anatomy of your foot. And while you adjust your shoes, posture, and diet, there is another mistake that acts silently on your joints. The fourth mistake. The monotony. Always walk at the same pace, on the same terrain, on the same route. The human body is the king of adaptation. It adapts to everything. If you carry weight, it strengthens your bones. If you run, it increases the capacity of the lungs. If you stand still, it decreases the muscles. And if you always walk the same way, he understands that that's enough. He stops progressing. Muscles stop gaining strength. The bones stop gaining density. The heart stops improving its ability to pump blood. The brain stops creating new connections. This is what we call a plateau. You're making the move, but you're no longer reaping the benefits. You're just holding on to what you already have, and over time, as everything in the body tends to decline after 50, keeping it isn't enough. You need to stimulate. But the worst thing about monotony is not physical stagnation. It is brain stagnation. There is a protein that is produced in the brain when we are exposed to new situations, to challenges, to uneven terrain, to changes of pace. This protein works as a fertilizer for neurons. It helps keep existing neurons alive and stimulates the creation of new branches between them. This is how the brain stays young, plastic, adaptable. When you walk in the same place, at the same pace, your brain goes into automatic mode. He delegates the walk to more primitive regions, which work on autopilot. The noblest regions, linked to memory, attention, planning, remain at rest. And what is not used, languishes. It is not a metaphor. It's a real biological process. The connections between neurons that are not activated are eliminated. It's the brain cleaning up, throwing away what seems unnecessary. If you don't challenge your brain while walking, it understands that the areas of balance, spatial memory, decision-making can be reduced, and he reduces them. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine that tomorrow you decide to walk in a park with dirt terrain, with small ups and downs, with roots on the ground. Your brain needs to process every step. Your eyes need to map the terrain and send information to the cerebellum. Your balance system needs to recalculate the position of the body at every instant. Your muscles need to adjust to each new incline. This is brain gymnastics. This produces neuronal fertilizer. This literally irrigates your brain with youth. Walking on uneven ground is one of the most beneficial things you can do for your lucidity after 50. And it doesn't have to be anything extreme. I'm not talking about climbing mountains. I'm talking about replacing the flat asphalt with the grass in the park. To climb a gentle slope. To go down a staircase with attention. To vary the speed, 2 minutes faster, 3 minutes slower. That's enough to wake up your brain and bones. The bones, by the way, respond to the varied impact. When you always walk on the flat, the impact is always the same, and the bone gets used to it. When you go up a slope, the impact is different, and the bone understands that it needs to strengthen. It deposits more calcium. It gets denser. It is the principle of what strengthens us is variety. Now I want to take a break to talk directly to you. If you've come this far, you've already understood how transformative or treacherous walking can be, depending on how it's done. You already know that fasting may be consuming your muscles, that posture may be compressing your arteries, that footwear may be numbing your feet, that monotony may be numbing your brain. And we still have 3 more mistakes ahead of us, mistakes that will touch on points that you probably never considered. But before I continue, I want to ask you something important. If this content is helping you see your health in a new way, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments the name of your city or your country because I want to know where you are from. I want to know that this knowledge is coming into real homes, to real people, who are deciding to take control of their own health. And tell me, Which of these mistakes did you recognize in your own journey? Which one of them turned on a light in your head? Write it there. Let's form a community of people who no longer accept ready-made answers, who want to understand the why of things, who refuse to believe that aging is synonymous with getting worse. Because it is not. Aging can be synonymous with better understanding the body, fine-tuning the machine, reaping better results with less effort. You just need to have the right information. And that's exactly what I'm going to keep bringing up now. The fifth mistake: walking dehydrated. When I talk about hydration, most people think of drinking water when they feel thirsty. But after 50, thirst is a bad indicator. The mechanism that triggers the sensation of thirst becomes less sensitive over the years. The brain takes longer to realize that the body needs water. When thirst appears, you have already been dehydrated for a long time. And walking dehydrated is like making the car engine run on little oil. It will work, but the internal wear and tear is enormous. Inside your body, water is the universal solvent. All the chemical reactions that keep you alive happen in an aqueous medium. Blood is 90% water. When you are dehydrated, the volume of blood decreases. The heart needs to beat more times per minute to pump the same amount of oxygen. The arteries, which are already naturally stiffer after 50, receive thicker blood and offer more resistance. Blood pressure rises. And it is not a small climb. It can be a 10-15 point climb during the walk. For a person who is already prone to high blood pressure, this can be dangerous. But the most subtle and perhaps the most devastating long-term impact is on the brain. The brain is made up of more than 70% water. When there is a lack of water, the electrical reactions between neurons slow down. Thoughts get scrambled, memory fails, the concentration disappears. And there's that brain cleaning system that I mentioned before, which works mostly during sleep. For this cleaning to be efficient, the brain needs to be well hydrated. If you've spent the day dehydrated, the brain-washing fluid at night becomes scarcer. The toxins that should be eliminated accumulate. One of these toxins is a protein that, when accumulated in excess, is associated with memory loss and diseases that compromise lucidity. Walking dehydrated, day after day, is like letting the garbage pile up in your house without ever taking it out. At some point, the environment becomes unhealthy. Mrs. Irene, 71 years old, came to the office with complaints of tachycardia. She said that during the walk, her heart raced in a way that was scary. She had already had heart tests, and they were all normal. No doctor had asked about her water intake. When I asked, she told me that she drank very little, because she didn't feel thirsty, and avoided drinking before leaving so she wouldn't feel like going to the bathroom halfway through. She would go for a walk at 9 in the morning, after having had only 1 cup of coffee for breakfast. Her blood was literally thicker. The heart was having to exert twice as much force. We adjust hydration. She started drinking a glass of water when she woke up, another before leaving, and taking a small bottle during the walk. Within a week, the tachycardia disappeared. The body was not sick. The body was thirsty. And no one had noticed. The recommendation is simple, but it requires discipline. Drink water throughout the day, even if you are not thirsty. A glass when you wake up. 1 glass before each meal. A glass before you go for a walk. If the walk lasts more than 30 minutes, bring water and take small sips. It's not to fill your belly with water. It's to keep the blood fluid, the brain hydrated, the heart calm. Your body will work much more efficiently. The 6th mistake is something that almost no one realizes. It is walking with tense shoulders and closed hands. You may think that this is not important, but there is, and I'll show you why. The body and mind form a circuit that never turns off. What happens in the body affects the mind, and what happens in the mind affects the body. When you're worried, anxious, afraid, your body takes a defensive stance. The shoulders rise, the neck stiffens, the hands close. This posture has been programmed into your nervous system since the times when our ancestors needed to protect themselves from predators. The problem is that the circuit works both ways. If you assume a defensive posture even without having a real danger, your brain interprets that there is a threat and triggers alert mode. The adrenal glands release the stress hormone. The heart races. Breathing becomes short. Blood is diverted to the muscles, as if you were going to run or fight. And all this while you're simply walking down your street in a quiet neighborhood on a sunny morning. The stress hormone, when released chronically, has very serious effects. It weakens the body's defense system, leaving you more vulnerable to infections. It favors the accumulation of fat in the belly. It disrupts deep sleep. And, as I've already mentioned, it can literally decrease the size of a region of the brain that's crucial for memory. This is not a metaphor. It is a process that can be measured in imaging tests. People with chronic stress have this smaller brain region. And what's more shocking is that some of that stress may be generated by the muscle tension itself while walking. That same walk that's supposed to relieve stress. Mr. Geraldo, the 63-year-old widowed patient, was a man who carried the world on his shoulders. Literally, his shoulders were so high that you could see the tension from afar. He walked to unwind, but returned home more exhausted than he left. When I asked him to pay attention to his hands during the walk, he found that he kept his fists so closed that his nails left marks on his palms. He was walking like someone who is going to a fight. The body responded with fighting chemistry. Cortisol flooded the blood. The exercise, rather than being a moment of peace, was a quiet battlefield. We work on body awareness. He learned to let go of his shoulders, to swing his arms naturally, to open his hands like someone holding a butterfly without hurting it. Within a few weeks, he reported that walking had become the best time of the day. He returned home with a light head, with a calm heart, with a sense of well-being that he had not felt in years. The body's chemistry has changed. The stress hormone went down. The feel-good hormone has gone up. And all this without a single remedy. Letting go of the shoulders and opening the hands is an act of courage. It's an act of telling your body that you're safe, that you can relax, that the world isn't a threat. It is to transform the walk into a ritual of peace. And believe me, your body knows the difference. Every cell of you responds to this message of tranquility. And now, my friends, I come to the seventh mistake. The error that closes the circle. The mistake that alone can nullify all the benefits you have earned by correcting the other six. The time error. The human body is governed by an internal clock that runs in cycles of approximately 24 hours. This clock is in all cells, but the master clock is in the brain, in a region that receives information directly from the eyes. The light that enters through the retina adjusts this clock every day. The morning light, rich in bluish tones, tells the brain that the day has begun. This triggers a cascade of events. Body temperature rises, the stress hormone peaks naturally and healthily, metabolism accelerates, alertness sets in. At night, the absence of light, especially bluish tones, signals that the day is over. The brain then orders the production of the sleep hormone, melatonin. Body temperature drops. The body prepares for rest and reparation. Walking in the morning, exposed to natural light, is one of the most powerful stimuli to set that clock. This improves mood during the day, increases energy, and most importantly, prepares the brain for a night of deep sleep. Deep sleep is the phase in which the brain's cleaning system works at full throttle. This is when the toxins accumulated during the day are swept out. Sleeping well is literally cleansing the brain, and walking in the morning, in the right light, is one of the best remedies for good sleep. But many people, for fear of the sun, for excessive heat, for routine, end up walking in the late afternoon or evening. And here's the problem. Walking late at night, especially under artificial light from streetlights and headlights, tricks the brain. It receives light when it should already be starting to darken the internal environment. The production of the sleep hormone slows down. You lie down, but you don't sleep, or sleep a choppy, superficial sleep, which does not reach the deep phases. The brain's cleaning system can't work properly. Toxins accumulate. Memory gets worse. The risk of diseases that affect lucidity is increasing. And all this silently, without you associating one thing with the other. In addition, walking in the strong midday sun is also not ideal. After 50, the skin is thinner and produces less melanin, which is the pigment that protects against ultraviolet rays. The risk of sunburn and DNA damage to skin cells is higher. Excessive heat can also overload the heart, especially in people who already have some cardiovascular fragility. The ideal time, the one that the most recent science points out as the most beneficial, is first thing in the morning, just after sunrise. At that moment, the light has the right combination of colors to set the biological clock. The temperature is still mild. The air is usually cleaner. Walking at this time is like giving the body a daily reset. It is to say to each cell, the cycle is right, the rhythm is maintained, life is in order. If it is not possible in the morning, the late afternoon, between 4 and 5 o'clock, is still acceptable. as long as there is still natural light and the sun is not too strong. The important thing is to avoid darkness and extreme heat, and here's a revelation that weighs in. Natural light in the eyes during the morning walk is not just for setting the clock. It stimulates the production of a neurotransmitter called serotonin, which is the precursor to the sleep hormone. That is, the serotonin you manufacture in the morning with sunlight in your eyes is the raw material for the melatonin that will put you to sleep at night. Perfect cycles. Nature does not make mistakes. We are the ones who move away from it. To walk in the morning, looking at the illuminated horizon, is to reconnect with this cycle that has been programmed into your DNA for millions of years. Now I want to tell you one last story. The story of someone who did everything wrong for a long time and who managed to reverse the situation with small changes. That someone could be any of the patients I mentioned. But I'm going to talk about a case that brings together all the errors. Mr. Mario, 65 years old. He walked fasting, looking at the ground in excessively soft sneakers, on the same flat course, dehydrated, with tense shoulders and closed hands, in the late afternoon. He had been doing this for 15 years, and in the last 2 years he noticed that he was losing strength in his legs, that his memory was failing, that his knee hurt, that dizziness appeared frequently. He thought it was the beginning of the end. He thought that age had come to collect the bill. But when we adjusted each of these points, the change was so surprising that he didn't believe it himself. Within 3 months, he regained strength in his legs. The knee pain decreased. The dizziness disappeared. Memory improved. The sleep became deep, and he told me a phrase that I never forgot. "Doctor, I thought I was getting older, but I was just walking wrong." This, my friends, is what I want you to engrave in your heart. You are not condemned to feel pain. You are not doomed to lose your balance. You are not doomed to lose your memory. Much of what we call aging is actually the accumulation of small, uncorrected mistakes, small habits that seem harmless but that dig a hole in your health. The good news is that these habits can be changed, and change does not require expensive medicines, it does not require painful treatments, it requires nothing but awareness and willingness. Tomorrow, when you wake up, I want you to remember this video. Eat something light before you leave. Drink a glass of water. Choose shoes that connect you with the ground. Raise your gaze to the horizon. Drop your shoulders. Open your hands. Vary the route. Feel the morning light in your eyes if you can. And walk with the certainty that each step is building the strong, lucid, and independent person you want to be in the coming years. Every step is a vote of confidence in your body. Each step is a declaration that you have not given up on yourself. And if this video touched you in any way, please share it. Share it with that person you love who may be going wrong without knowing it. Share it with your brother, your wife, your neighbor, your longtime friend. Because quality information is an act of love. It's the best gift you can give to the one you want to see well. Subscribe to the channel to continue receiving science-based content, explained with the calmness and respect you deserve. And remember, your body is the house where you will live for the rest of your life. Take care of it with the wisdom of someone who knows exactly what he is doing. See you in the next video.